no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
It's the size of Texas, Mr. President.
Get off my plane.
I see dead people. We're in the middle of a war. It's time to pick a side.
Welcome in to Season 3, Episode 10 of Duel of the Greats. This is Nathan speaking. I will be your host and judge for this evening, at which time we will be looking at two very pre-9/11 films, when the idea of terrorists hijacking a plane was not only not off limits, but was considered to be fun and entertaining and a huge box office hit. We will be looking at Air Force One, which Steve will be arguing for, and Executive Decision, which Jeff will be arguing for. I'm very curious because while these movies are very similar, I think they also have some very key differences. I also think the tone of these movies is a little bit different. And if you are interested at all, you should be following us on social media. We are at Duel of the Greats on Instagram and Threads. You can email us at duelofthegreats@gmail.com, and we are at Duel Podcast on TikTok. But without further ado, I want to get right into the debate. I have already pre-selected with a coin flip who will be going first tonight. And tonight, we're going to hear about Executive Decision from Jeff first. Take it away, sir.
Thank you, Nathan.
Before you get in, are we just going to ignore that entire intro was like NPR, fresh air, all things considered?
Fresh air. Yeah, that was literally what I was going to say. On my segment of Fresh Air today, we'll be talking about Executive Decision.
Interesting. So Steve making fun of the judge. I'll just make a note of that for later. I'm
It's a
just
bold move.
jotting that bold move.
Are you
right
mocking
out
me?
swinging at the judge. Okay, good to know. All right. Okay. Sorry, Jeff. Annie interrupted Jeff. That's also good to know. Okay, Jeff. Continue with Executive Decision.
Thank you, Your Honor. All right. So I think similar to a good amount of weeks that we've had, we're rolling tonight with a couple of movies that obviously they're very similar. It's the whole point of the show. But both these movies are pretty close in terms of, I think, quality level, right? So this is going to come down to certain aspects of the films and what you like more than the other and what one does better than the other. And that's what I'm going to say about what Executive Decision does better than Air Force One, that in fact makes it a better movie. So when you look at the two films, by the way, I think it's kind of funny that this is essentially the third film in this season alone that involves a president getting kidnapped. So that might be the biggest through line through any season that we had. But the so the major differences, as I see it, through these two movies here is Air Force One is pretty much just kind of like a boilerplate type of action movie, right? It's obviously the president. This was a novel concept at the time, right? So, there had been movies and stuff about planes getting hijacked, but the idea of like Air Force One, oh my God, right? They literally say it and they're like, this is the safest plane in the world, and they say it, and then right after it got hijacked. So this is kind of somewhat of a novel concept for Air Force One. But other than that, I think it kind of sticks to a lot of the same sort of action movie tropes that it needs to. And what makes Air Force One good is that it does that effectively. So, Air Force One's still a good movie. But I think when you look at Executive Decision, it looks a little bit more towards the thriller, the tension angle. Like it very much sets up a tension for the audience. And I think what it does effectively, more effectively than Air Force One, is it ratchets up that tension throughout the movie and makes it such an experience that really sort of grabs the audience a little bit more, in my opinion. So, we can you start from the first, but Steven Seagal. Oh my God. Okay, that's a point for this movie, right? Steven Seagal is in it, which you would think would be a negative. Normally, I would. Um, but the dude essentially gets almost ripped in half within the first like 20 minutes, and while he narrowly avoids getting ripped in half, he literally flies out of an airlock at like 30,000 feet and is just like hunted or pooped away from the plane essentially. And they have this like really wide shot and he's just flying away and everyone's like, "Ah, damn." And it was just like it was so awesome because you could tell Steve, I think you dropped the knowledge last week about how Steven Seagal was so horrible on set that they decided to kill off his character, even though that wasn't supposed to happen in the script. So you could kind of see it on their faces when it's like, all right, guys, we got to try and act sad that Steven's gone. Okay, let's just try it for a minute. And they're all just like, oh, dang, okay. So that was pretty awesome. So that's a point in the favor of executive decision, I think. Um, and then I think overall, I think the cast of Executive Decision. It's both movies have really good cast, but I think the cast of Executive Decision works really well together, and I think it works better together than Air Force One does. And I think part of that is what leads to it excelling at getting this tension and sort of bringing the audience in. You feel like you're a part of the group, right? Everyone has their sort of eccentricities. They're not these all these button down Secret Service agents and high ranking officers and cabinet members and stuff. You know, they're more your everyday guys that makes it a little bit more approachable for the audience. But you really do, as far as the tension is concerned, you really do have some fantastic scenes in there. You know, the scene where Kurt Russell's character has to um, he's doing a zip line in the top of the plane. This plane is gigantic, by the way. I mean, I guess it was a 747, I think, if I remember correctly. Um, so I guess those are pretty big, but there's a lot of like extra space. I didn't know planes had attics, but here we are. So, but Kurt Russell's doing this zip line over this thing here, and um, John Leguizamo's character is sort of like guiding him through it, and we're all watching, and it at one point because the ceiling is really weak, so if he falls and his foot goes, it's going to go right through the ceiling, and they're going to know that they're in there. It was almost reminiscent of the fantastic scene from the first Mission Impossible movie, right? The very famous Tom Cruise scene where he's coming down from the ceiling and the sweat droplet hits his glove, etc. So not quite as good as that scene, but it was reminiscent in how it was done. Um, in terms of that for just its ability to sort of ratchet up that audience, edge of your seat sort of tension there. um and then the scene where Holly Berry is she's trying to find they know they have a mole, I guess, type of that's a terrorist, that's actually one of the people that's in the plane, and they have to try and find out which one it is. And so Halle Berry is able to find it out, and she knows she's able. At this point, she's made contact with the people that are the soldiers on the plane, and she's got to like write it on her hands. And the guy's coming, and she has to put her hand up to the camera screen so that they can see which one it is. But she's got to do this covertly, and then the terrorists keep coming through on patrols, and they keep asking her questions. And these are just really good, really effective scenes that I think do a really good job of getting what the movie wants, which is just, you know, are they actually going to be able to do this? And beyond that, you have, okay, can they? There's multiple aspects of this, of what the executive decision has going on, where you've got the bomb that's on the plane itself, and then you've got the fact that the terrorists are holding everybody hostage and have their demands, right? So on Air Force One, you just have the hostage demand dynamic. So with executive decision, you've got both of those going on at the same time, which adds this sort of extra element here. So you've got, while all this stuff is going on, and you're trying to get, okay, do we have a way to um, can we bum rush these terrorists and take back the plane? That type of a thing. You've got that going on while also in the background having, okay, even if we're to take care of this plane, can we um, disarm this bomb? Because otherwise, if we take back the plane, then they can still detonate the bomb. We're all screwed anyway. So we got to make sure both these things happen, and both of them happen essentially concurrently, so that we can make sure. Because if we defuse the bomb, they might find out about that and start killing passengers, or that might affect how they act. So you have to have sort of a 1-2 type of thing, and they have a couple times where they're ready. They're like, okay, we're about to defuse this bomb, and then they're gonna come out of hiding and they're gonna bum rush the terrorists and they're gonna try and take back the plane, and then they find out some booby trap in the bomb, or some that the bomb is just a fake and it's a decoy, and then, oh crap, what are we going to do now? So then they have to call it off, and these just moments of where they set these things up. They do a really good job of, they got the soldiers with the night vision goggles coming down. They're ready to come in, and you can feel the tension building moment by moment, second by second, and it does a really good job of that. And then you have to pull it back, and then you kind of release as the audience a little bit, but at the same time you're like, oh shit, this stuff's still going on. We still got to figure out what's going to happen here. um so I think that executive decision does that really well, and they do it scene after scene, and it doesn't feel like something that gets repetitive. I think sometimes when you have action movies, sometimes it can feel like you're just throwing another thing in there, right? For example, we just watched Speed today. Show my daughter Speed for the first time. Right. Fantastic movie. Um, I think Speed is actually directed by the same guy as Air Force One, maybe. But no, that's not right. That's not right. Wolfgang Peterson did Air Force One. Um, but anyway, but like at the end, right, the of Speed, they have the bus. They get everybody off the bus, and then it seems like it's ready to go, and then they're like, oh no, wait, we've still got this other thing, we can still get the guy. And so they set up this whole new thing, and it's like 20 more minutes of like, okay, I thought we were done. um so and I feel like there's kind of a little bit of that going on with Air Force One, but it doesn't, the way executive decision sort of stacks all these events that happen, it doesn't get to that point, it doesn't feel that way. um and I think that's one of its strengths. So, you know, I think when you look at Air Force One and what it brings to the table, right? It's an excellent action movie. There's some good close combat fight scenes. I had to look it up to see. I was like, how old was Harrison Ford in this? Because there was one scene. I mean, clearly it's obviously a stuntman, but they want us to believe it's him. With like a really close scene, where really close combat, and I believe he was special forces in his character. So there's reason to believe it would be that. But so there was some cool stuff like that. But it feels like mostly it was just kind of action oriented with that, and you had a lot of cool action scenes, but it didn't grab me the same way Executive Decision did with how that was all set up. And I also think with Executive Decision, since it's just a regular passenger plane, it's a little bit easier to stomach. Okay, they're taking this plane over, right? That is, planes have been taken over multiple times in history. They've been held hostage. They've been, all sorts of things like that. So, um, I mean, Nate, you mentioned it, 9/11, obviously, big one, But then with Air Force One, like it it just kind of happens on the plane, and it's like they sort of explain how it happens, but it's like, man, this was stupid easy to take over the plane that's the most secure plane in the world with the president of the United States on board and his family. They were just like, I mean, you just a couple of fake IDs and one dude on the inside, and bam, it's game over. We got guns, we got everything. This plane's ours now. And I mean, they're even kind of, I do think they kind of sort of maybe it's meant to be sort of a little meta humorous way try and address it, because the movie they're like, how did this happen? And like, this is the safest plane in the world, how does this happen? So I don't know, but it felt kind of, once you can get past that, and I think in 97 or whenever this movie came out, I think it was easier to kind of be like, okay, maybe that could happen because or at least maybe easier to suspend disbelief on these sorts of things. But in our world where we live now with security, I think that may be as far as both movies are concerned, that may be one of the things that has aged the most poorly. Just how easy it was for these Russian terrorists to take over Air Force One and just walk straight on the plane and then get the guns and it's game over. Um, so there's that, but yeah, ultimately that's where I come out. Air Force One is a really good, really fun movie as far as action movies are concerned. It hits all the beats it needs to hit. It does what it needs to do. It's fun. It's enjoyable. Executive Decision, I think it does all that, and then it tries to go a little bit step further and tries to bring you in with the audience. And I think with the cast of characters that they have, the performances that they gave, and the way the movie was structured, I think sort of brings the audience in a little bit more, gives you a little bit more of that tension, and then you obviously get the big release at the end with with just the good guys win, of course, but where even though in Air Force One, right? You get the final moment where the guy on the inside, Secret Service agent, tries to take over at the final minute, and then the president gets off the plane, that guy's stranded on it, and then it gets totally destroyed, crashing into the ocean, right? So that's a cool scene at the end, but again, it's just it didn't feel as satisfying to me as the ending of Executive Decision did, as much as as good as it was. The special effects, are what they are. They're almost 30 years old at this point. Still look pretty decent, I think. So, that was kind of it was a well done scene again. But I don't know. For me, I think Executive Decision just in how it grabbed the audience, how it ratcheted up the tension, the characters, the performances. I think overall, you don't have the Harrison Ford factor, which counts for an absolute a lot because I love Harrison Ford. So I'm not even going to try and say anything bad about the dude. Um, so you lose that. That's Air Force One right there. Is you've got Harrison Ford and he's the president, and that's awesome. Um, so you don't have that with Executive Decision, but I think outside of that, with everything else and the way the cast works together, I think that is what makes it the superior film this week.
Very good points about Executive Decision. I will have some more points. Interesting, there's a couple things that I think even Jeff forgot about Executive Decision. I did not rewatch these movies, by the way. We've had kind of an internal debate of whether the judge should be watching the movies. We've decided that if they have never seen the movie, they probably need to watch it for some context. But if they've seen both the movies, regardless of how long ago they've seen them, they shouldn't rewatch them. And I am in that position this week where it's been a few years since I've seen either of these movies. So there's maybe some things I'm remembering incorrectly, but we'll talk about it a little bit later. For now, I want to hear from Steve and hear about uh, Get Off My Plane, Air Force One. So whenever you're ready, take it away.
So in the Matrix week, he tells me he's discounting the fact that the Matrix is so successful, and I can't argue that. Now in this week, he steals the money shot from the whole movie when introducing the movie, the Get Off My Plane line. The whole thing builds up to that. I was going to finish my argument with that. And you just took the wind right out of my sails, right out of my sails.
I really did.
I feel like I'm being set up for failure here. So, at the risk of sounding like a broken record, the last couple times I think I've argued, period, both with Jeff and with Nate, I've had to concede that both of these films are actually pretty decent. I think Executive Decision. I don't disagree with a lot of the things you said. I think it's probably a little bit better in terms of being a moment-to-moment thriller, and I think it actually does several things better than Air Force One. Air Force One should be the pick, though, for a couple reasons. Three main reasons. One, the sheer charisma of Harrison Ford, which you mentioned, that's a pretty steep hill to overcome. Two, well, not two. This is also part of one. Gary Oldman so the performance is the number one. Gary Oldman as just barely restrained, well, not restrained psychopathy, but barely holding it together psychopathy is just he's magnetic and terrifying, and he makes a lot of what he makes this movie kind of worth watching in certain ways. So that's one. The performances of the main leads. Two, the off-plane stuff. So in executive decision, it's mostly, do we shoot it down? Do we not shoot it down? What are they going to do? Are the guys that got on, did the guys successfully get on the plane? We don't really know. In Air Force One, you have this whole parallel storyline about, is the president on it? And then once we figure out that he is on it, is the president incapacitated because his family has been captured? Do we invoke the 25th Amendment? And so there's this whole secondary storyline with the cabinet and the vice president, played by Glenn Close, who does an excellent job as well. And that's pretty entertaining in and of itself. That's almost like a West Wing plot. So that's two. One, the performances. Two, the off-plane stuff.
Now,
That
hang
literally
on,
was a West Wing plot, by the way.
I'm gonna.
Was it really?
Invoking the 25th. Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
Did you not
I read
read-
that.
Oh, and I'm gonna
I've never-
Have you not
interrupt.
seen The West Wing, Steve? You don't
I've
watch
seen
Steve
West
West
Wing?
knows
Wing,
my.
but I've never
Hang
watched
on. Steve knows my favorite show of all time is The West Wing.
that was a little
Clearly,
bit-
that was the most planted reference I've ever heard. It's much like a West Wing. That is so planted.
Know your judge.
Jeff,
Know your
if you would have,
especially now that I know you
objected
haven't
to
seen
that.
Because literally season 5, almost the entire season, it revolves around the president's daughter being kidnapped, and they invoke the 25th. And
Okay,
John
there's
Goodman comes
also-
in as the new president.
There's also a single episode that's great called Angel Maintenance, where it's not a terrorist thing, but they can't get Air Force One to land. There's a problem with the landing gear, and so they're like trying to keep it private from the media who's on the plane, that they actually can't land the plane, so that the media doesn't alert people, so that other countries don't know that the president is literally stuck in the plane, and they keep refueling it, and it's just like going around and around. I digress, but that's a planted reference. I'm going to try and ignore it, but well argued, Steve.
All right. And the third reason, and perhaps most important, is Executive Decision is a good movie. It's an entertaining movie. It's a good action thriller. Has lots of moments where you're rooting for the good guys and all this other stuff, but also it's tense and suspicious, and filled with suspicion. Air Force One has a lot of that too. Maybe in some cases not done as well. But Air Force One is also a time capsule. It is a pre 9/11 artifact in a way that Executive Decision is not. Executive Decision could have been filmed and released in 2006 without much being different. Maybe they would have had to get a bit more creative on how they got the bomb on board. But it's Muslim extremist terrorists. It is weapons of mass destruction. It's something that it is, we expect, and like I said, could have been ripped out of any War on Terror novel, by Tom Clancy post 9/11. Air Force One captures this very interesting time in America and the world where America is the sole superpower post Cold War. We've talked about this, and this is one of the things that I wanted to explore with these movies and why they came out at this time. This movie is absolutely a product of its time. From the beginning, Nate, I wish you would have rewatched it, because the opening is just, it's the basis for the Iraq War and neoconservatism distilled down into like 2 minutes. We're America, and if there's bad in the world, we have to act. If there's anyone anywhere suffering, we have to act, and it'd be a moral irresponsibility not to. That's the kind of shit that would not have a movie now could not get away with doing that with a straight face, right? Maybe in 2003, right as the Iraq War starting, but once 2004, 2005 start happening, this movie is from a different time. They literally team up with the Russians to take down a neo-Soviet regime. It's a American neoconservative fever dream from the late 1990s, but that I think a lot of Americans kind of harbored that idea at the time. And I think it's part of the reason we got into the Iraq War. It's this idea of not only American exceptionalism, but American potentially interventionism. We had just gone into Bosnia Herzegovina, carried out all those operations with the UN.
The idea that it's America's responsibility.
Yes.
Not only just
policemen.
I got you. Yeah.
And we can say this without any sort of embarrassment. It's like, no, this is our imperative. This is our moral imperative. And it's just so 1997 or whenever it was from. So it, like I said, it standing alone is almost kind of a historical artifact to watch and understand what Americans saw, thought, and felt in the pre 9/11 days. So once you added 9/11 in with we have a boogeyman now for good reason, right? Obviously, we were attacked. It was awful. We've talked about this, but it took that American, the drive, the optimism, all these things from the 90s and distilled it down, and they were able to, bad actors were able to harness that and lead us into the last 25 years. But anyway, so that's really depressing. But it is a nice historical piece because of that. So one, again, the leads. Harrison Ford, he tricks Gary Oldman, I believe, into how does he do it? Oh no, he does a secret. He's got a phone in his pocket, and he's like talking to a Russian guy that's captured him, but he knows he's got the White House on the other line, which that's a whole other thing. And so he's basically saying, "Shoot at the plane," in code, essentially, because he knows that if a missile gets fired at the plane, that the chaff will deploy or blow up the missile and it'll rock the plane enough that he'll be able to use that as a distraction and take out this guy that's holding him at gunpoint. The sly little smile that Harrison Ford gives when he understands that the missile has been fired just like he wanted, it is the most Harrison Ford, most charismatic goddamn facial feature or facial movement that could ever be done. And that right there is one of the reasons that this movie, it perfectly encapsulates why he carries this movie. Harrison Ford, and I don't think just about anybody else could have done this. Gary Oldman talked about that. Fucking terrifying. He's amazing in everything he's in, and in this one, he's just he's about ready to blow at every instance, and in some cases, he does, and just shoots people point blank. So there's your performances. Two. What was point number two? I already forgot. This is the worst argument in the world. I got so wrapped up in my point number three
I'm not
about
sure
the
because
historical
you
artifact.
did point one, and then you did point two,
1.5.
and then you said point two is actually part of point one. So I'm
The
not sure what
off-plane
point two
stuff.
was.
The off-plane stuff. I already talked about that in depth. You don't really have much of that. Definitely not in the same way in Executive Decision. And then three, what makes this movie unique and why you should pick it. It is a product of its time. There's a reason these movies were being made around this time. Terrorism was in the air, but this one really, like I said, it takes terrorism as its core, the reason that all this is set in motion, but it explores it in such a way that you can literally see the American psyche of the late 1990s. So there you go. Questions?
Those are both very compelling arguments. It's interesting not rewatching the movies because you both kind of reminded me of some things about the movies. I will say, Jeff, I thought you missed a couple of things. If I'm being honest, there are two moments, but tell me if I'm wrong because it's been a long time since I've seen Executive Decision. You talked about the tension. I recall two moments in particular. One, I know I'm not forgetting at all. There's a light in the cockpit goes off, and the pilot who's being held at gunpoint is like, "There's no way the whole cabin's pressurized. Like it's got to be a malfunction, like with the light or something." And he goes down, or like a circuit's fried. He goes down, and the guys are down there in the dark. So the captain of the plane goes down there, and Russell reaches out and grabs his hand. It's real startles him, but he looks around. He points him to the other guy, and the guy rips the Velcro off the side and shows the American flag on this. It's one of the coolest things ever.
It really is one of the coolest moments
Yeah,
in any action
that's
movie
absolutely that's a really well
It's
done. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Is there
No
also
excuse
is
for
there a
forgetting on that
part?
one.
There's another thing that there's kind of this and I'm trying to kind of remember. You both have to remind me because you just rewatched the movie. There's a minor subplot in Executive Decision where there's a marshal on board who's armed, a U.S. marshal
Hmm.
who is armed, and he's kind of under the radar, kind of this side character the whole time. But I remember this part where Halle Berry knows that, and so she just immediately does something to destroy the passenger manifest. and the lead terrorist guy comes over and is like, "Where's the manifest?" And she goes, and she just admits, correct me if I'm wrong, she just admits, she goes, "I destroyed it." And he just looks at her and goes, "That was very brave." And you think he's gonna like hit her or something. He doesn't. He just kind of like moves on his life. Am I remembering that correctly? Is that the scene?
Well, I don't that she definitely does that. I don't know that I remember her saying it was that she destroyed it. She said that it was lost or something like that. And
Like
he
he
definitely
looked behind
suspects
her.
her. He
Yeah,
definitely
I think
suspects
Jeff,
her
you're
as doing
right. Like
something.
she doesn't admit it, but he definitely knows she did it.
And does he say
Is how
like
it's
that was
played.
very brave?
Yeah, and then he says, "I think that was very brave and unnecessary," or something like that.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, that sounds
I
right.
thought that if I remember that being a really, because at one point they do kill one of the flight. I mean, the terrorists aren't afraid to kill people, and they do kill one of the flight attendants. Also, the subplot of there's this civilian passenger on the plane who is like some high ranking politician. He's not the president or anything, but
JT
like
Walsh.
he wants to run for president. Like
He's a
his
senator.
like
Yeah.
yeah, he's a senator, and so they kind of bring him back, and they do kill him. They put a gun right to his face and they kill him. So I feel like that was kind of some tension. I will say that the knock against I agree though with Jeff and honestly with Steve as well. I think kind of said this about his own movie that I mean there's some overact. I mean Air Force One is certainly bigger. I mean, Gary Oldman is just insane in the movie. Actually, on set, they called him in this movie. I read they called him Scary Gary because his performance was so was so
Oh,
intense.
something else that I
He's
forgot too
terrifying.
that we'll have to bring in executive decision, a character who figures prominently who's not on the plane is the one-armed man from The Fugitive. He's on there. Do you want to talk
Yes,
about a moment in time, Steve? Encapsulating the 90s. What better than having the one-armed man from The Fugitive as a villain in your movie?
I think I've made my decision, and I did appreciate. I have to say, I really appreciated not watching the movies because I really did listen to the arguments. I think just in my pure memory of it, Executive Decision I like a lot more. I like it more than Air Force One. I, however, think that Steve argued Air Force One better tonight, and I'm going to give it to Air Force One. I really appreciated what Steve said about their one. I had truly completely forgotten about the conflict on the ground of like, do we invoke the 25th? I'd kind of forgotten about that angle. And I do agree with kind of this notion of if you're going to show someone like this is the 90s, like this is foreign policy in the 90s in the United States of America, executive decision isn't gonna it's not gonna land on that. Air Force One though is exactly what the kind of thing we sort of Air Force One is kind of one of those movies where it sounds so like silly, kind of like Independence Day. There was a time in America where like people were really proud of the president. like like in a
Yeah.
and I know there's people that are proud of the current president, but in kind of like a contrarian way, there were people that were like genuinely there was a pride that people experienced with whoever the president was. Okay. In sort of a natural way in America. Okay. There were people that just really for the most part, many Americans really liked and respected Ronald Reagan, even if they didn't necessarily agree with his politics. That has completely gone away. But I think Air Force One and things like Independence Day kind of play into that notion, that very 90s notion of like, people really used to like respect the president and like the president kind of in this sort of human social way.
The
And that's just
the
that's
thing
just not
that
the case anymore.
had I been able to rebut this idea before you made your decision, which I was not given the opportunity, but had I been, I would bring up that one thing that, and I guess Steve's argument would we would be both arguing the same thing. It's just whether it's good or bad. But with Air Force One, um, it's sincere in its beliefs. There is not a sort of awareness of America overstepping its bounds, and what leads to what Steve, what you're talking about, where America gets to in 2004, 2005, when we start to know, we just didn't have as much information about everything at that time, right? But um, So like there is that belief in that sort of belief system present in Air Force One, but I'm not sure that's a good thing because it was a sincere belief of the people in the film that made the film at the time. Like this is we're showing what's great about America as opposed to necessarily, deconstructing that idea.
I think there's also this idea of like it kind of to Steve's point of like it's almost now the reason Air Force One is such a time capsule when he was talking about like neoconservatism and like we have a moral imperative. And again, not to be too political, but like it's literally the exact opposite now. That America has there's a I mean there's a person who's currently president who's campaigned on a slogan of America first and pushing policies that he believes are going to solely benefit America. And so that notion of like, the sort of like Republican war hawks, like that notion of like we need to go and do things around the world, it seems so opposite now. That notion of like we have a moral imperative to go fix problems around the world, for better or for worse, it doesn't really seem like that is the case anymore. And that's why I think that time capsule element of Air Force One is just it is. I mean, I think it really
But
works in that way.
but see, I would then also argue that I don't know that many people look at it that way. I don't know that there's many people picking apart the time capsule element of political beliefs of Air Force One. I think I think when people think of Air Force One, they think of "Get off my plane," right? And that's an awesome scene. Okay, so and it's Harrison Ford. Like that's the one point I have to concede as well. Like it's if Harrison Ford if Kurt Russell's the president in Air Force One instead of Harrison Ford, um, then there's no way that movie is in any way the success that it is or that it was. Um, and I don't even know that you could put Harrison Ford in Kurt Russell's role in Executive Decision. Like he's too magnetic. He has to be the president or something, in that type of scenario. So so yeah, like, well, I don't necessarily disagree with your point. I just don't know that I think that people today are looking back at Air Force One and being like, oh yeah, man, that was definitely a time capsule. I think they look back and they think, oh man, Harrison Ford was awesome as the president.
But that's the whole reason we have this podcast.
I was going to say, I think that's right,
no
but I'm
no one's
arguing
doing
to
what
him
we're
why it's,
doing. I mean, this is just what we do.
the
Right,
irony.
but you're also looking at it through a lens of as a time capsule, right? Which is, I think I was trying to present it more as looking at it from, you know, the when they were actually created, not necessarily looking at it through the lens of today as much as looking at it through the lens of when it was released.
I mean, again, I'll say again, I like Executive Decision more. Executive Decision to me is a better movie. And again, I mean, Jeff, I think you started this way by saying, at the end of the day, it's going to come down to like what you like. And I really did try to listen to the arguments. I probably like something like Executive Decision more. I like the tension in Executive Decision, and I like, the way the ensemble works in Executive Decision. It definitely feels a little bit more real. Um, and again, Air Force One is, I think, supposed to be kind of outlandish how they're able to jack Air Force One. I just thought Steve made better arguments. That's, I mean, and that is my prerogative. I think you're mad because you were about to come back. You were on the hot. I mean, you were on a
heater.
huge losing streak, and then you started to go on a winning streak. So impressive that you actually still had a chance to win this season if certain things had fallen into place, and I think you're mad. You're mad that your
And I
momentum
mean,
got cut out from your.
and somebody whose lead might be slipping away might have an extra motive to have me as the loser. I'm not saying, I'm just saying.
And Steve started by insulting me, so I knocked that bitch down. That's how powerful the argument was. I think they really are both good movies. I mean, I would watch both the movies again if they were on. I really do love. I remember there was a period of my life where I really loved Executive Decision when around the time the movie came out because I was like allowed to watch it, and so I have very fond memories of watching an Executive Decision.
You should have mentioned West Wing, Jeff. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah.
I know. I should have mentioned West Wing.
You know,
I came in with the West Wing knowledge, though. That should endear me more. Steve hadn't even watched it. He dropped it.
I've watched parts of it.
He always says that.
There's
He
like
always goes,
140
"I've watched
episodes.
parts of it."
I know. I've
Yeah,
only watched like parts of the first season. Yeah, I just think when we're arguing these movies, it's what makes one of them unique. You know, makes it for the better pick, and that's why I wholeheartedly agree with your decision. But in the moment-to-moment viewing, I prefer Executive Decision as well. Air Force One does still work, and I think you're probably right, Jeff. Most people that would watch it today are watching it for the rah-rah, let's kick some ass aspect of it. But it does have some genuine moments that make you go like, "Fuck yeah, America!" Like the scene where they get all the hostages and they're putting parachutes on them, and they get the back door down on they're succeeding basically at rescuing getting the hostages off the plane. And the one terrorist comes down and is like looking through, and the music is swelling, and it's this orchestral thing. It's like, God damn it, we did it! I love this shit. Of course, things go poorly after that, and then people get sucked out the back of the plane. But it's got some real good action movie moments that make you excited.
I think for me, outside of the get off my plane, my favorite moment is when Harrison Ford finally gets to the other plane, and they're like, we're now changing call sign from Air Force 2 to Air Force 1, and everybody cheers. It's like, oh yeah.
Like,
Even still, that got me a
Wait.
little bit. Yeah. So but
right?
yeah, to your something that's kind of interesting too, to your point when you talk about whether or not this would ever sort of happen today in terms of a movie being made like this. Like something that's interesting too is with or when you're talking about the pride in just the president, regardless of politics. It's impossible now to have a character as the president in your movie without making it extraordinarily clear what his politics or her politics are in the thing that you're doing. But back then it was just like the president. The president could just be this grandiose figure like Harrison Ford. You didn't necessarily have to make a declaration on what. I don't think we ever get any sort of thing about whether he's a Republican or a Democrat or any of that sort of stuff. And that's something that I think back in that time, it was same in Independence Day too, right? We don't get any sort of indication with that because you talked about that earlier. But yeah, like nowadays, you simply could not do that, right? You're making shows like Veep and different things like that where these things are absolutely clear which side, and it just part of it is because we're so divided in America right now. But that's just kind of an interesting. I don't think that sways the movie one way or another. Just sort of an interesting aspect of movies of that time.
Another interesting observation about Air Force One in particular, Donald Trump in his 2016 campaign, somebody asked him about Air Force One, and he's like, "Hell yeah, I like that movie because the president stands up for America." And it's like you're missing the point entirely. Like we were talking about, he's America for all this other stuff. He, a lot of ways, is everything that the president in Air Force One is not.
Did you see Harrison Ford's response to that?
He's like, it's just a movie or something like
that.
Yeah,
he's like, I'm gonna look straight into the camera and I'm gonna tell you, Donald, it's just a movie. And he said something like, "Get off my movie" or something to that effect too. So because he was doing press for The Force Awakens at that time, so somebody had asked him about it.
Oh God, 10 years ago. So
I don't like your insinuation that Donald Trump has no media literacy. I mean, I don't know where you're getting that information from.
I can't possibly imagine where that would have come from.
Well, it was an excellent decision, Your Honor.
It was. I had to make an executive decision, and I did do that. Now, I will say this, Jeff. I don't know who's judge next week.
I'm
Is it
out of the
me?
rotation here.
I think it's me.
Because what was last week?
We skipped a
Uh,
week. Listeners,
we
if you're
skipped a
listening to
week.
this,
But
you
yeah,
may have
by the
noticed.
way,
Steve was
we
judge last week.
apologize. Steve
Was
was
I?
judge last week. Okay.
What was it?
Yeah,
Oh,
because I did the
Prestige,
Prestige
Illusionist.
and Nate did the
Yeah.
Illusionist,
Yes.
and I won.
Okay.
That's right.
So Steve. So okay. So you'll be
I'm the
judge. Well,
judge
Jeff.
next week.
Well, this is going to be in your wheelhouse because next week, correct me if I'm wrong, we go back into horror and we
That's
go
right.
into Sixth Sense versus Stir of Echoes,
Yeah, this
which
will
I
be a
think a
good
lot
one.
of people. It should be a good one because the Sixth Sense obviously was the much more popular movie, but Stir of Echoes, a lot of people kind of were like, you know, it kind of got it sort of slid under the radar because of the Sixth Sense, but a lot of people think it's as good, if not better. So,
I remember seeing it
Brandon,
on.
I'm afraid we're
I remember seeing it on like HBO, and
yeah.
because I didn't see it in theaters, probably because of Sixth Sense, and then I was just like, well, what the hell? This is a pretty good movie.
I don't think I've ever seen that movie. So this will be.
Stir of
You're gonna
Echoes?
enjoy it. It's
Yeah.
Stir of Echoes. You're gonna enjoy it.
All right.
Brandon, we need a wheel.
I got a wheel. Who am I spinning
What
for?
is it called? The spinning wheel of destiny?
Yeah.
Let's do Steve first this week.
All right, Steve. Do you have one you wish you would see that you prefer?
No, I literally have no choice or no preference.
No preference? Jeff, just out of curiosity?
I'm judge.
Or Nate?
I'm indifferent. I like both the movies.
All
I'm
right.
indifferent.
Steve gets Sixth Sense.
Okay.
Jeff
There it
or
is.
Nate, you got Stir of Echoes.
Perfect. Well, that is another fantastic episode of Duel of the Greats. I'll hit you with the socials again. We are at Duel of the Greats on Instagram and Threads. Please email us. We respond to literally every single email we get. That is not an exaggeration. We will probably call you out just on the show if you email us. So please don't hesitate to do that. Duelofthegreats@gmail.com. If you are a TikToker, you can follow us at Duel Podcast on TikTok. And that is episode 10. Please join us
So,
next week if you're.
Sorry, before we do the full outro, I think next week is essentially, is it the deciding week? Because I guess not, right? Because I'm fully eliminated here. I think we were talking about giving a score update last week. So I'm now 2-5, and Nate, you
Nate's 4 and
are
2,
yeah,
and I'm
Four and
4
two,
and
Steve,
3.
you're what?
So I have to win next week
Yes,
to keep this alive.
I think that's correct.
That's a lot of pressure. Because then I would be 5 and 3. Nate, you would be 4 and 3. Going into the
Then
final
you'd be the
week,
judge
I
the
would be
following
the
week,
judge.
Steve. So, so
Oh,
you wouldn't be able to-
damn.
yeah.
We might have to call
So-
Brandon in to avoid any impropriety.
Yeah.
We didn't
Guess,
discuss
guess
their-
Judge?
That's true. That's an interesting scenario should it present itself.
Who would be making that
means I would-
decision
I
to get
would
us to
be-
that point, Jeff?
Ooh, that's a good question. I guess it all comes around, huh?
Oh shit! All right, well,
Oh,
should be
shit.
interesting.
Well, if you're gonna watch along with us for next week, The Sixth Sense,
And
for
and the
M. Night
last
Shyamalan.
week is a doozy of a pairing as well. So that's
I'm
gonna be
gonna
an
save
interesting
that.
one to
Yeah,
argue.
we're gonna keep that. Yeah, I want to keep that.
pretty
Keep
sure
that one
we
in the
said it on
chamber
here, but
until
yeah,
we.
You
we
said it was
probably
your
keep it.
you said you were looking forward to it in the preview episode for the season,
It
Nate,
is my
but we haven't
favorite
mentioned it
titled.
since.
I'm not gonna mention it now. It's my favorite titled episode of anything we've done. It's maybe one of the very best things we've ever done in any of our lives. Okay.
We haven't even done it yet.
We haven't even done it. Okay, so I'm gonna keep it in the chamber for next week, and I'll let the judge Jeff next week maybe introduce it. But for next week, if you're watching along, Sixth Sense,
Give us one more thing.
Stir of Echo. There's one more thing.
I would like to have the final word if that's possible. So
I know what the final word's gonna be. Go ahead.
I don't know that you do.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to say, get off my plane.
God damn it. I was going to say, get off my podcast. Ah. All
All
right.
right, Steve, here we go. This the
No,
full
it's
outro.
over.
Steve,
The
go,
moment has
go ahead,
passed.
take it. No, I
moment
just
has
think the moment's
passed.
bad. Am I making the moment past worse by like
Is it now?
really
Is it now? Is it now? You're only making it worse.
Now me like leaning into the back. Okay, all right. Next week, Stir of Echoes, Sixth Sense, Duel of the Greats. Follow us, social media. Thank you for listening.